So, I want you to just close your eyes for a second and imagine a primordial Earth. We're talking about a world wrapped in the mists of deep antiquity, where the night sky wasn't just, a pretty canopy of stars, but a domain of absolute, terrifying power. Today, we're going to dive into some highly alternative historical narratives derived from ancient texts and modern speculative research. We're going to look at the awe inspiring and, frankly, kind of eerie evidence proposed by theorists who suggest the Great Pyramids were not merely built by human hands, but rather by, or maybe even for, ancient astronauts. Okay, let's just jump right into this with a question that honestly should send a bit of a shiver down your spine. Are we merely property? It is a deeply unsettling thought, right? What if the true origins of humanity and our place in the cosmos are not at the very top of the evolutionary ladder, but somewhere much, much lower down? What if we were cultivated? The early 20th century researcher Charles Fort really hit the nail on the head and captured this dread perfectly. He wrote, I think we're property. I should say we belong to something. That something owns this earth, all others warned off. Think about that for a second. Alternative researchers use this profound concept to establish a real sense of mythic dread. It's this idea that mankind might literally be a possessed species, overseen by slumbering celestial masters who laid claim to this world a very, very long time ago. Let's get right into Chapter 1, Architects from the Stars. So, how exactly did we go from being simple hunter-gatherers to master megalithic builders overnight? Well, we're going to examine the staggering forces that are alleged to have kick-started human civilization basically out of nowhere. The source texts we're analyzing present three primary theories on how the pyramids could have been constructed with non-human assistance. First up, the texts mention the Anunnaki, utilizing advanced stone-slicing technology, a super precise process allegedly responsible for the Great Pyramids in Egypt and even the massive platforms at Baalbek. Second, there's the theory of ancient human breakaway civilizations. The idea here is that they survived prior cataclysms and used highly advanced flying craft to masquerade as extraterrestrial gods. And third, we have the grim possibility of a genetically engineered master race of towering giants, bred specifically to oversee and manage human laborers. Now, visual anomalies worldwide are very often pointed to as evidence for this. Take the famous hieroglyphic drawings found in the Temple of Abydos in Egypt. When you look at them, you can clearly see shapes that look astonishingly like modern helicopters or some kind of anomalous craft. According to insiders cited in the sources, like Corey Good, these glyphs actually represent what's called mental interface technology. We're talking about highly advanced, polished stone craft operated telepathically. The claim is that the ancient Egyptians were witnessing the technology of either off-world groups or an ancient breakaway civilization. Moving on to Chapter 2, Awe of the Ancients. Imagine for a moment just standing in the sandals of a primitive human, witnessing craft, literally slicing through bedrock. How in the world would you react? As you'd expect, there was a stark divide. For the common people, it was absolute terror and paralyzing awe. I mean, they were witnessing shape-shifting sky travelers and technologies so magical they could only be divine. But the priest castes, their reaction was entirely calculated. The sources suggest that the priests were often way more in the know than even their kings. They essentially formed opportunistic alliances, acting as intermediaries with these trickster gods, securing their own wealth and power by controlling the masses' access to these awe-inspiring beings. And this incredible reverence was carved directly into stone all over the world. The plumed serpent of Levanta, which is an Olmec sculpture from around 1000 BCE, is a perfect example of this. The sources note that early humans were completely overwhelmed by the sheer power of these extraterrestrials or perhaps advanced elites, so to make sense of it all, they memorialize these beings as immortal gods. The feathered serpent actually anciently emblemized the undulating serpentine shape of the Milky Way galaxy itself. They were literally worshiping the bringers of civilization who descended from the stars. Which brings us to a much darker turn in Chapter 3, Humanity as the Laborers. So, why were these advanced beings here in the first place, and what did they want with us? Well, this is where the narrative darkens significantly. Turning to ancient Mesopotamian texts, like the Enuma Elish and the Atrahasis, we uncover the alleged, deeply disturbing purpose behind humanity's creation. Under this speculative lens, humanity is a chimerical species, basically a genetic mashup of the gods and pre-existing terrestrial hominins. The texts argue that advanced extraterrestrials engineered us specifically to serve as a biological slave race. Our whole purpose? Resource harvesting and planetary labor. The ancient cuneiform tablets bluntly imply that humans were bred quite simply to relieve these gods of their exhausting mining and building duties. As one researcher chillingly put it, human beings appeared to be a slave race languishing on an isolated planet, a source of labor for an extraterrestrial civilization. When you look at the Great Pyramid with that in mind, with its millions of massive stone blocks cut and placed with absolutely impossible precision, this theory reframes it entirely. It wasn't built by willing citizens honoring a pharaoh. It was achieved through the relentless, engineered, and forced toil of our ancestors, working under the terrifying direction of non-human overseers. Let's look at the aftermath in Chapter 4, Echoes of the Rulers. Eventually, the skies grew quiet. The celestial architects departed, or perhaps they just retreated, leaving humanity behind. But what exactly happens when the gods leave? The sources propose that a powerful elite agenda took over. You see, the pharaohs and surviving elites didn't just go back to hunting and gathering. They had access to the remnants of the gods' technologies. It's theorized that these ancient elites managed to survive localized cataclysms, like the sudden catastrophic climate shifts of the Younger Dryas, by co-opting leftover advanced spacecraft and anti-gravity tech. They basically formed ancient secret space programs to escape the sheer devastation that swept away the general population. To maintain control over a ruined world, these surviving rulers followed a very specific, calculated playbook. Step 1, they claimed direct divine descent from the departed star gods to completely legitimize their absolute rule. Step 2, they hoarded whatever mental interface technology or advanced machinery was left behind. And step 3, and this is absolutely crucial, they deliberately kept the general population totally ignorant of their true history and their native joint co-creative abilities. They used the imposing majesty of the leftover pyramids not just as tombs, but as massive props of absolute power, while they waited for the true masters to return. And that leads us to our final and honestly most haunting segment, Chapter 5, Awaiting the Celestial Return. We are now shifting our focus from the deep past to the staggering long-term purpose of the Giza complex. The ancient texts point to a massive precessional cycle, the slow 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis, built directly into the very architecture of the pyramids. Let's look at the timeline. At 16,500 BCE, we have Zep-Tepi, the legendary first time of civilization's origin. Then, by 12,020 BCE, the Giza complex's subterranean passage aligns flawlessly with the stars Vega and Sirius. And then, right around 10,500 BCE, the highly advanced Isnan agricultural civilization in Egypt suddenly vanishes, replaced by much cruder cultures. The pyramids aren't just buildings. They're tracking astronomical movements across tens of thousands of years, preserving an actual cosmic schedule. The sources reveal that the Great Pyramid is simply not what we think it is. Consider this. It was built over a primordial 8-meter bedrock platform that dates all the way back to that first time. Its subterranean passage cuts hundreds of feet into solid rock to align flawlessly with the celestial meridian. The entire structure was literally over-engineered to survive global cataclysms, and it's operating on the staggering 26,000-year precessional cycle. So this isn't just a tomb for a dead king. It is an indestructible, long-term beacon meticulously tuned to the stars. Which brings us to the ultimate staggering conclusion drawn by these researchers. These monuments are, for all intents and purposes, a terrestrial machine locked in standby mode. They are dormant machinery built to last far longer than the memory of modern man, intended to remain fully functional for when the cosmic alignments finally return to their original positions. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, incredibly provocative thought. As that massive 26,000 years celestial clock ticks down and the stars return to the exact alignment of Zep Tepi, when the cycle completes, will the architects return to claim their property? It makes you want to go outside and gaze up at the night sky tonight, doesn't it? Perhaps with the exact same awe and the exact same reverence felt by our ancient ancestors. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. And as always, keep questioning everything.